On today's episode of Cooking for Kyle, we will be making naan for pork carnitas with naan. So for naan, here are the ingredients you're going to need. You're going to need some olive oil, some salt, and an egg. I'm doubling the recipe. You're going to use some yeast. You can use the packaged yeast, is fine. I buy it in bulk there. Some eggs, butter, flour, sugar. That's all you're going to need. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get some hot water. The recipe that I found on the internet calls for about half of all of these things, but since I'm cooking for Kyle, I know Kyle's a big eater, so I'm going to double everything so you can cut everything in half. Get some hot water, and then we're going to take 4 teaspoons of the yeast. And so that's 1 and 4. There we go. And we're going to just kind of mix that in a little bit. I'm going to add the sugar at this point. 2 teaspoons of sugar. Doing it all one-handed here. 1, 2, and the salt. 1 teaspoon of salt. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. 1 teaspoon of salt. Oh my goodness. I missed. I would guess about half a teaspoon went in. So there we go. And we're just going to kind of let that froth up a bit for about 5 minutes. I think you can see there that it's gotten a bit frothier now. And so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the rest of our wet ingredients. Going to add a little bit of Greek yogurt. 2/3 of a cup. 1/3 and 2/3. Half a cup of olive oil. The original recipe called for 1/4 cup. I think when you double that, it makes half. Wait, is it an 1/8? Double of 1/4 is an 1/8. I don't know, it's confusing. Some olive oil and a couple of eggs. And now we got all that in there, we're just going to put the mixer in and mix it up a bit. And kind of get it all. I have my dough tool on. Probably this part would go better without the dough tool, just the regular blade, but I didn't want to have to switch out, so this will work. Okay, so now that got it kind of all mixed up in there, we're going to add flour. Now, over the whole course of events, we're going to add about, the recipe says this is going to take about 5 to 6 cups of flour, so I'm going to start with like 3. And let it start to go there. Mix that at medium speed for a while, and I'll turn this back on whenever it's close to time to do something else. Okay, so it's been maybe just about a minute or so. You can see that it's starting to look more like a dough, very, very wet dough, so we need to add another, I'm going to add another heaping cup to that. Whenever you add your big amounts of flour to this stuff, you gotta start the mixer on very low speed, or else it'll kick that flour up everywhere. And I'll turn this back on in a minute and see why a KitchenAid mixer is better than doing this by hand. It takes me a while. And I believe we're about ready for another addition of flour. And this will be our 5th cup. The off button there. The recipe says it's going to take 5 to 6, and this is going to be 5. So we should be pretty close after this addition. I turn the speed up a little bit, and it's kind of rolled up into a big ball, you can see. If we turn it off and pull it out, that's one big lump of dough. It's still pretty wet, still kind of clingy, I think. And with naan it will be, but I think I want to put just a little bit more flour in here. Get it to kind of dough out a little bit. Okay, so it's all incorporated in again, so I'm going to turn it off. And actually it didn't get all incorporated. There's some, see the dry things at the bottom here? We want to work those in and get those to mix in with the dough before we pull it all out. Nice shot of my left arm there. Make sure to leave your ring on when you're doing this stuff. Otherwise, you're not married. I think that's how that works. Now, I think it's all pretty well mixed together. You raise it up, and it's gonna stay on the hook. You gotta work the dough off of the hook. Sorry, this camera is not quite high enough for you to see what need to be seen. I needed 2 hands. I'm gonna remove my dough latch, and so now you can see inside. So here is our dough, and I'm gonna lay it out on the counter and gonna work it through a little bit. It's whenever you're making really big batches like this in a mixer, sometimes you can't really get the whole thing to mix very well. You get places where it's too dry at the bottom and other parts that are sticking to the hook. You got to kind of work them all together to get more of a homogeneous thing going.
The recipe really calls for kneading like this, but I'm going to. And good enough.
So now I'm going to take the bowl and going to spray a little bit of cooking spray in it and stick the dough back in, and now it's time for it to rise. So it's going to need probably something like an hour to rise, and what I like to do is, there's a lot of things you can do. I like to cover it with a towel and stick it in the oven and set that oven for about 450 degrees. And that'll, oh wait, no, that's not what you want to do. So my oven is kind of nice, has this warm proof feature. Push it once and it makes the oven warm. We don't want it warm though, that'll start cooking the bread. We want to proof it. So hit start, and so that's going to get the oven just a tiny bit warm, just the right temperature for proofing, and the bread's gonna rise for, we'll check it. It needs to be double in size, so we'll look and see once again what it looks like right now. And hopefully in about an hour, 45 minutes or an hour or so, it's going to double in size-ish. We can go from there. I forgot to say that you don't have to have a fancy oven to do anything like that. If you A lot of ovens will have a feature like that, but if you can't figure that out, then you can always just set it on the counter in a sunny window. You could set it down on top of a heat register if the heat's running, although you want to be careful not to get it too hot. So get it too hot and you start to crust over the bread, potentially kill the yeast, but I don't think a heat register would do that.
Infrared light, invisible to the monkeys, reveals their high perches. There is warmth in numbers. Huddling together preserves just enough heat to survive the freezing temperatures.
So after about an hour, we'll go ahead and take this out and see what it looks like. And yeah, it's somewhat bigger than before, which is kind of what we were going for. So I think we can start working with it. So we're going to take a pinch of flour in our countertop. We're going to just pour this out. It's a big puff ball. Now we're going to divide it into the number of pieces of naan that you want to make. I think I decided I think this recipe says do 8. I doubled it, so that's 16, but I'm going to make kind of bigger ones. I think I'm going to go 12, so got to get 6 out of each of those. So we divide this into thirds and cut them in half. Do the same with the other one. This is very approximate. So now if I cut each of these into halves, so yeah, these are gonna be big and thick. Like I said, it's a recipe for 16, and I'm doing 12, so these are gonna be pretty big. All right, and so now we've got our little dough balls. At this point, we want to make sure that we have you're gonna want a nice big griddle of some sort. I have an extra large electric one that works quite nicely for this, and I've got it plugged in, and I'm just gonna turn it up all the way to the highest heat. Here I have like 1.5 sticks of butter that I melted in the microwave for about a minute, and so we're going to go back over here and start getting these ready to go on. So just kind of take one and roll it out to the size that you want. So the thinner you roll them out, the bigger, the more surface area you're going to get, but they're also going to be thinner, so it's kind of whatever you're going for. So since we're making carnitas with these, I'm going to kind of want to use these as a wrap, so I'm going to want them kind of big and kind of thin. If you're just going to kind of eat them like bread or for dipping, you maybe go for a smaller, thicker sort of thing. So there's the first one, so that's ready to go on. The heat's not ready yet, so grill's not hot enough yet, so we'll set this aside and I'll do a few more while we wait. Now I've got a few stacked. I was gonna do one more and make a point here. So the more you make, the bigger batch you make, the bigger the problem or issue this becomes. But since they're such large area, they take up a lot of counter space. You can stack them, which is what I'm doing, but you got to be really careful when you stack them that you don't get them too big of a pile, because then they'll stick together. Or you should be putting flour in between them, but I just don't want to touch any more flour than I need to while I'm operating the camera. So see, I've sort of dangled them over the edge there as they wait. This is hot now. I got my melted butter, and I'm going to go ahead and put the camera down. I've got a little butter on here because butter makes things taste good. You don't really need it for sticking, but it's more of a flavoring agent than anything. And then we're just going to lay our bread on the pan directly on there. And there you go, you can fill that up. Can't really see there, but I'll pull up the camera in a second so you can see what's going on. Got all four of them. You can see that they start to bubble up as they cook. The bigger the bubble, the better job you did. That's why my bubbles never get very big. We're going to let that heat for just a little bit. And you can about flip these with your fingers. But I'm going to go ahead and use the spatula. But before I flip them, I'm going to get the other side nice and buttery. And there we go. Now we're ready to do the flipperisky. And if I were going to eat these plain, I'd be putting things like coarse salt on them now. It's not quite ready to flip. And as soon as I decide the bottom's brown enough, these are done and we're ready to plate the meal. So we can take these off, put them on some sort of a baking pan, and stick them in a warm oven so they can keep them nice and ready to go while you cook the rest of them, or you can just cook them as you need them, whatever works best. And now we will go ahead and plate this out. Start by putting the naan, and we'll get the carnitas, which you've surely already prepared and didn't need much help. I'm gonna add a little tomato, a little bit of just whatever garnish you like. A little tomato, a little red pepper, a little onion, some greens, and last but not least, a little bit of feta cheese to top it off. And we'll eat it with some guacamole flavored chips, and there you go.